Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Seekers, the Book Readers Club, and this is sponsored by Digital Agility Institute. And as always, we have our esteemed guest Akhilesh Chaturvedi, who is founder and CEO of Yati Consulting. And today we are looking to talk about Micro Herring's book, that is DevOps for Modern Enterprises. Akhil, how are you?
Good, Nivarti, and it's again pleasure back in 2 weeks' time. And I think I have become the partner in this platform rather than being the guest. Right.
Absolutely. Yes,
So
you have always been the partner, not the guest. But yeah,
yeah, yeah,
just
yes.
we have to respect your positioning as well here because you have such a great collection of books and such a great collection of knowledge in your and wisdom. So yes, Akhil, and today you chosen DevOps for modern enterprise, my micro herring.
Hmm,
So again, I'll start with the same question again,
hmm,
right? So
hmm.
why do you think this is a book to be, focused upon at this time?
And as I always say, that this question is really relevant whenever we start, right? Because that's a context setting, and we'll talk about what is the importance of the context setting. So far, if you look at the DevOps transformation books, which are there are three, four more books are there. This book talks about something about the ecosystems where the large enterprises who are not the digital native enterprises, they have the vendors, the system integrators. They are also buying the products, the COTS products they bring in, and there is a legacy systems and how do you deal with. So it is very relevant in the ecosystems of the IT organizations, which is banks or insurance companies or whatever you talk about, and then there are service providers or some service integrators, and there are IT products companies, and there are some cloud companies which are providing those services. So microhearing has brought in all that aspects. First of all, second, interestingly, I have worked in Accenture for a very long period of time, and it was resonating with the thought process which I have inculcated working in Accenture, right? And their thought processes as well. And the third, IT Revolutions, by which this book is published, um, talks very high about the approach which has been presented in this book. Yeah, so these are the three things which made me to start looking at. More importantly, I have been speaking to many forums where I talk about. See, you can create a delivery architecture, the delivery method which we talk about, the value stream based delivery method, and the tools and the technologies that you can bring in. You can also bring in um, the value stream thinking, and you can bring for the delivery itself, you can bring the culture, what should be training and whatnot, right? In this book he goes little beyond, which we have been always talking about, both of us, and we are also writing a particular book onto this area, if you recall, that it's not about delivery architecture alone. It requires the people architecture, it requires business architecture uh, to be thought through. It also requires to design the organizations and the design the teams to deliver, right? In this, and we will talk about some more details maybe going forward, right? So I see that he is trying to cover beyond the value stream methods which has been talked about in many of the transformation journeys, and that makes me very interesting to talk about this book.
Hmm. And while I agree with you on that point, I think one of the things that stood out for me in this book was his primary focus is on people before he talks about application architecture or even the microservices, which is quite contrasting to the the general view of DevOps being tools based, DevOps being driven by
Mm.
technology and all that, right? So, uh, how do you see that? Because the focus is so much more on people. So, and
Right,
I've
right.
been talking about that okay, DevOps is about people, DevOps is about the culture, DevOps is
Mm.
about the mindset, correct?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
how do you see that from this book's point of view and even application wise?
Right, and in this book, if you look at and he talks about misaligned principles and the processes, right? So we are where we are, 27, 21st century enabled business and processes, right? Internet enabled business and processes. Now, if you look at by and large, we have inherited in the IT industry developing the softwares from the manufacturing, right? So, so in the mid-century, mid 20th century, there are management processes that has been followed across these manufacturing and others, and we also inherited same management principles and the processes. And um, also, not only the management processes, but the principles also is quite old, and which not only the 20th century, but it goes back to the 19th century, right? So very interestingly, he starts the book with the misalignment. We are in 21st century. The thinking of the management principles comes from the 19th century, and the processes comes from the 20th century, right? So they're completely misaligned, and therefore he talks about, hey, at that point of time, that management principles, that processes were really relevant, right? But not today. And therefore it is very important to start with, right, that end of the day, who develops the product? Not the tools, not the technology, but the people, right? So the development of the IT is the people oriented. And and and, and I think you are working in a large organizations, and you understand that the people are the key, right? There are strategic advantages for building the 21st century businesses. Yeah. So it's a good part that he started with talking about the people and how exactly the misalignment has been carried even in the 21st century. Very interestingly, Nivarti, just to go to the one more point, he talks about in his book about um, um, when you talk about the misalignment, he also talks about something called the mental model, right? And he takes an example of that. What is this mental model? Our mental model is has been carried from the 20th century and the 19th century, isn't it? In the 21st century, right? So, but then if you look at that, the mental model, he said there are two mental model existing in our in our industry. One by the native organizations like Google or Microsoft, Google or the Facebook and whatnot, right? They have a different mental models, and we have a different mental models, and we are not working. Most of the organizations, the bank, insurance companies, and others, they also have the IT systems. They have IT organizations. They are working with the wrong mental models, right? So that's the another thing which it starts talking about, and therefore it is very important to start with the people, I believe, because that you need to clarify.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. And another point which I really looked at, and I was kind of intrigued to bring it up to you, was he talks about a kind of maturity model where he's focusing on waterfall to agile, agile to DevOps, DevOps to lean.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really think, right? So for us who have been seeing this from Toyota time,
Mm-hmm.
so everything that we are talking about today originates from lean itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you visualize that thought that okay, an enterprise can start from a waterfall model, then move to an agile way of working, then you move to DevOps way of working, and then you actually become a lean agile organization. So do you visualize this to be a sequential transformation?
Not really. Not really.
That's
Not
what it
really.
comes out from the, when you look at the picture that's in the book actually.
Yeah, so I think this is a very different thinking about that picture. I think people have to become little smart to read it, what exactly he puts together. He says, what is the focus has been into the waterfall method, right? What are the principles that we are following it, right? Then he goes into that when you come to the agile, what has been focus and the principles when we are doing this agile part of it, right? Now, then he goes and talks about, and I'll give you some examples as well from the book and my own experience and interpretation of it. Then we go into the DevOps, and then he goes to the lean, right? What is he trying to say is, uh, what has been the focus of the waterfall method, right? So, uh, uh, what we have done, I'm not talking about the waterfall doing right now, but yeah, the waterfall method has been predominantly maybe the 80s and the 90s, right? And that what we thought that, hey boss, the way the management processes has worked in the industries in 20th century, the management principles, the command and control has been worked together, that has been adopted into the waterfall. Now we found that, hey boss, we need to develop the software and we have to make it work. And then we have brought in together the agile part of it, right? Where we are trying to accelerate the development part of the IT. Now, when you bring the DevOps, mostly in the beginning of the DevOps, we all were thinking that, hey, this is nothing but tools and the technologies automating many of the things, and then things will start working in our favor, right? Now, what he argues after that as a lean method, he's saying that, you know, um, you can do the agile, you can do the DevOps, but it is not going to work for the bulk. It has to be that work packages which you are going to deliver had to be a small enough to go from the business to deployment and then to service, right? So that's what he's trying to talk about, is that you need to develop the small batch sizes. That's what he means by the lean. Yeah. So how do you take the small batch size, small stories, and then deliver from one end to the other? That's what he means by the lean. He's not talking about anything else. He's saying that, hey boss, can you reduce the the work size, the work packet, the IT product packet you're talking about? So can you reduce that size? And there is a very good argument he has put together, because then you can have a faster delivery. The focus will become on the fast delivery. And when you have a work packages, or the when you have work packages very small, then you can also measure quality. You can also learn from that experimentations, and the feedback becomes easier and the faster to come. And therefore the focus is that, how do you reduce the package, the work package, or the what we are going to try to take about, right? Now he also brings the analogy of the past, where we have set up the hardware, then we have set up the softwares, and we have done all of that stuff, which was completely replica from the manufacturing industries of the past, right? Now he says that replica, that kind of thinking in the manufacturing is right, because that you cannot produce one car at a time. The work packet cannot become one part at a time, that you need to do a little certain investment into that. In IT, since the cloud architecture is there, then you have the very upfront cost is very, very low, then you can afford to have the smaller work packages. So think the lean from that perspective, Nivarti, if I'm able to give you that answer to you. Yeah. So that's where he goes to.
Okay. I'm just trying to, bring more focus on his thought process. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
criticize
So absolutely.
what
Yeah.
he's gone through, right? So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and when you look at, further depiction of his relationship between agile and DevOps,
Mm-hmm.
that he brings about, and there he essentially talks about agile being the face of managing the change with
Mm-hmm.
a customer focus, right? And
Yeah.
that's where he brings in the combination of development and customers as a depiction when you talk about agile delivery.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
And when he talks about DevOps, he brings in essentially the dev and ops together.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
is that a constrained view of, again, emphasizing that DevOps is not a business focused transformation or a business focused initiative, and it is more constrained to the operational environment of the organization? Is a question I have.
Very interesting, right? So, in that same picture, if you look at that, which has depicted and has been put together as well, on the top, he put together culture of lean, right? So, what he says is that, and again, I will go back to the work packet, which is talking about that the batch size is going to be a small. So, the focus at the first level will be that, and we have been talking about that, you know, uh, the customer centricity, right? So he talks about that how do you understand the customer, the business, and that IT, so that you can bring the changes, which is very important for you to be in the market and relevant, right? And then how can you make it faster? But you develop the small batch size or the work packet. And now when you're developing that, it should be lean. So it shouldn't be that you are creating a big packets, you are trying to make all that changes, but you do not have the capabilities or you do not know how exactly to go about it when you are delivering it, right? So therefore, he says that in the delivery channel, the DevOps plays the major role where you are creating the stabilities, where you are creating the services, enhancing the services, right? And when you are enhancing the services, you are increasing the throughput. You are also, when you are delivering your services to your customers, you are reducing the risks. And when you are delivering all of that stuff, you are getting the faster feedback from your customers, so that when you come back again to the agile world, where you have to develop the newer things and then and more aligned to what the customer is looking for, or doing some kind of innovations, it will give you the better benefits. And if you look at that, why he's saying that and focusing on to that part is that where the cost is. So he's trying to see that the cost reduction part of it, where you are delivering fast, your quality is high, and also you are able to manage the cost. So it is that sequence he has put together, Nivarti, in my mind. Yeah.
Okay, and that definitely brings me to the next question,
Sure.
right? And I may be sounding a bit critical. I'm not. I'm
Sure.
actually trying to delve dig a bit deeper into the understanding of the way he has his own mental model working through, right? When he
Hmm.
wrote the
Hmm.
book. So when most of the DevOps transformations that we look into, right? What is the ROI
Hmm.
of the DevOps transformation? Is to
Hmm.
reduce the TCO,
Okay. Yeah.
right? That's what you uh, would have heard, and that's what I have been experiencing, right? When
Right.
we are talking about DevOps
Hmm. Hmm.
transformation.
Hmm.
So does that not put a constraint it to be a completely operational, inward oriented organizationally, and does that not take away the focus
Hmm.
and the investment it requires in terms of the significance you put on it, right? So by focusing only on TCO or the cost rather than value, which we talk about.
Beautiful. I don't think, and I really, really liked what you asked that question. So I don't think when I reading this book, he's really focused on the cost, right? He says that cost is not the focus. The outcome is the focus. So he talks about it that there is the three parameters on which we have been working, right? The cost, the quality, cost, quality, and the speed. Right? In the past, we have been talking about reducing the cost or improving the quality, but we have talked very hardly about delivering faster, right? And when he is saying that when you're delivering faster, you are not delivering fast because you want to deliver it fast and there is a output is produced, right? How is that going to impact the customer? How it is going to create the value for the customer? So he talks about that part of it very well in a nutshell, and he says that what are the metrics that you will select to make sure that the values are delivered to the customer, right? So he talks about really well about it. And to further to argument to this, right, he says when you are doing when you are delivering the when you are doing the transformation, DevOps transformation, and agile is, or this is actually the agile transformation rather than DevOps transformation, because he says you cannot do agile without DevOps. So actually he's talking about agile, not about the DevOps. What he's talking about is, imagine that you have come to a vendor, and you are trying to deliver the IT product. And when you bring the DevOps into your organizations, so obviously whatever the simple tasks are there, which is not very complicated, that can be automated, you will automate it, right? And those tasks are done by whom? By people who are getting their rate card is very low, or they do not have that kind of a skills and whatnot, right? Now when you bring the people out here, you will see that that particular cost is gone, but the implementation, DevOps implementation cost is very high, because then for the automations you are bringing the higher skilled people, and the people on the top are not gone from the pyramid. Therefore you will see this, the figure of transformation is very high. And that's where he says that you need to look at the overall what exactly it is delivering. And therefore he talks about that, man, when you're doing the DevOps transformation, you see that what the customer is getting the value out of it, the quality at speed. And also in the larger context, when you have a 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and 18 months horizon, there you will see the cost starts coming down for you. So definitely, certainly his focus is, and the matrix also which he has put together, is about creating the value for the customers. For certainly he talks about it.
Okay, I think moving away from the hard part there. So
Yeah.
I think one of the important things he has focused on is how to measure culture
Hmm.
within the organization, right?
Hmm.
And how collaboration can really help the organizations to move forward and to deliver what is important to the customer. How do you see that in the significance of DevOps transformation?
Interesting point. I think he talks about that you can't really measure the culture, right? So there is no significant parameters by which you can measure the culture, right? So he goes into the context of it, and he says, what is the context of doing the DevOps? What is the context of doing DevOps, right? So the context according to him you are doing is, you wanted to develop a 4 different kind of guiding principles, right? So he talks about the 4 matrix actually is put together. Business effectiveness, right? That's what you measure at the first level. Then when you are measuring the business effectiveness, you are looking at the number of experiments run, the systems interactions, the feature uses, and average time to decisions, and all of that. He talks about the business effectiveness. Then he goes into the delivery efficiency, speed up, and the automation, where he talks about the cycle time, number of manual steps, number of deployment failures, time to feedback, transaction cost, and things like that. Then he goes into the architectural flexibility, simplifying and decoupling and all of that, where he talks about the percentage of transactions in the old versus new, technical debts, number of security concerns, number of outdated components, number of interfaces backward compatibility. So some kind of a matrix like this. And then finally goes into the operations and reliability, where he talks about that how long you took to recover, mean time to recover, how many tickets you have automated, how many services automated, how many of defects, number of defects you identified and closed, proactively found versus the user found, and all of that stuff, right? So when he says that the culture is all about in four different dimensions, right? So if you want to measure the culture of any organizations from the DevOps perspective, you look at that. What are the some of the behaviors that is bringing the business effectiveness, that is bringing the delivery efficiencies, that is bringing the operational reliability, that is bringing the architectural flexibilities, and simplifying the architecture to deliver the next generation of the products and services to the customers, right? So he doesn't go about the very specific about it, but he measures that culture will be measured by this, some of the behaviors and things like that.
Hmm. And one of the things he definitely differentiates is between the skill workers and the knowledge workers,
Absolutely, yeah.
right? So how do you see that from a significance of, let's say, the people management, and how it influences the overall organizational dynamics per se, right?
Mm, mm, mm. And when you say this question, reminds me my own working in the organization, and how we used to manage our own people, right? And um, and then he very politely, beautifully connects to Daniel Pink book, The Drive, right? He says that now we are in 21st century, and if you have to drive something, then you have to bring the masteries, autonomy, and the purpose, right? You have to set the context for the people to do whatever they are doing, self autonomous driven teams and the individuals, right? So in the knowledge work, they know where the work is happening, they understand the challenges, they understand the context, they understand the problems of that particular place, right? They understand the systems and they understand the dynamics in which they are operating. Therefore, if you are saying what you wanted to get done, but you are not seeing the complexities, you are not seeing that what are the different methods and options that people can find out if they're allowed to, and resolve the problems and give you the better solutions which you can't think of, right? And in the same breath, he also talks about wisdom of the crowd. So earlier, and there are many organizations still I know, which is command and control, and managers and the leaders. I mean, I would say managers are not letting go their command; they're not letting go their authority. He talks about that the wisdom of the crowd is very important in the knowledge and the skills work society. I don't know. That's the view he takes, and he says that why you should set the context and make sure that the people start taking the decisions by themselves, and why it is so important. Yeah.
So, and the focus mostly of the book is on legacy,
You're very right.
right? So that definitely brings a question up, right? So when you are really moving as an organization and focusing on enterprise agility, where it is important that you focus on your legacy, it's also about maximizing your opportunity in terms of the emerging technologies as well.
Mm.
How do you balance this approach of managing my dirty area of my home versus beautifying the new space that I have built up?
Right. And very interestingly that you brought the legacy, and he has defined legacy in a very different manner, Nivati. Right? He says, what is the meaning of legacy? Whatever the code, whatever the systems you have developed tomorrow, whatever you're going to deliver the product tomorrow, the moment you go to that tomorrow, the today's and before all becomes legacy, right? That's what he talks about, the legacy. Now he says that there's a true legacy. There is a true legacy, and the true legacy systems are, when you look at that, um, And he goes and draws a picture of that using the application radar, where there's a true legacy. And what are the true legacy is about? That you want to you have the legacy systems, sort of applications that are hardly ever changing, but they're very much important for the business. Um, and there are like not supporting business critical processes and not investing. So that kind of the legacy systems are there. Then he goes and talks about there is another group of the applications that are supporting businesses, but they are a little bit removed from the customer, so they are not directly facing to the customers. They are supporting the business or supporting the applications which are customer facing. And then he talks about that applications which is called the innovation engines, which is nothing but the customer facing applications that you can use to drive the innovation, that you can use to drive the customer experience, that you can try to make your customers impact felt, or on or if on the other side, he says, talks about the flip side of it, that if these applications are not done well, then you're going to create the grief of the customers, right? And what you're presenting to them. And but these applications that he talks about are relying on the middle layer, which is, he talks about the workhorses for your applications like ERP or HCM systems and things like that. So how do you think about modernization? How do you think about bringing all that systems as a part of the high speed delivery model of doing things? And then he talks about that, how do you go about and look at these different applications and bring into that place. Little further he goes about and talks about, say, suppose that the master application which is customer facing, and there are application which is doing only they are only like 20% of the time they are getting into the customer facing applications, and there are applications which are 80% of the time which is going to be used. So when you are looking at the modernization of the whole systems of delivery, you need to categorize your applications into 3 different portfolios and think that where you are going to invest your money to make the systems deliver faster services, faster components, faster features to your customers, right? So that's the way he thinks about, and I think I like that approach of his thinking. Yeah.
And for those who are watching this in the recording, if you like what you are seeing as a discussion, again, feel free to subscribe to our channel that we focuses on purely the transformation discussions, and you can subscribe to the channel as well.
Absolutely. And Nivarti, there is another beautiful point. He talks about how to deal with the true legacy. Everything is legacy, but the true legacy, right? So he talks about the strangler pattern, which we are aware of, that try to erode the legacy applications by moving the functions to the newer applications bit by bit. Don't boot completely, because that's not the right thing to do. Cut a small, little you can move. And there are a number of patterns which we can talk about if the people are interested into that. And then he says, when you are doing all of this stuff, that make the real cost of the legacy application visible, right? So what would happen if that applications are encountering the legacy application? So what would be the cost of the delay of other application are encountering due to the legacy applications? So if you are not delivering that applications faster enough, just because of this true legacy applications, what is the cost from the value perspective, from the overall TOI as a TOC? You talk about total cost of ownership, what it is, right? Then he talks about what is going to happen, the defect caused by the legacy application. So what would be the cost implications, what would be the value implications when the legacy systems gets into the defect, right? Now he talks about the other thing is that, are you managing the legacy systems And are you understanding that how much money you have spent on maintaining them and running those legacy applications, and what is the value which is going to create for you, right? And then he goes and talks about uh, what is the opportunity cost that is going to cost you, because there are true legacy systems are in place, right? So that then he talks about that how do you deal with and how do you make sure that you keep true legacy systems, which is critical for your business, and see how exactly you can start moving slowly by a strangler method or some other mechanism into the new systems of delivery, or let go those applications or do not work at all with them.
So probably coming to the the last portion of the book, Akhil,
Mhm.
I see that there is a great reference to the application architecture and also the significance of microservices being used
Yeah.
when you are looking to go DevOps, and
Mm.
how it can really help manage the batch size as well, right? So when you're
Right,
talking
right,
about,
right.
and probably even take out that dependency on system
Mm.
integration when you have
Mm.
APIs being available for different
Mm.
services that you want to consume, right?
Sure.
It takes away a lot of dependencies between the systems also, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but when I look at it, right? So
Mm.
is that a kind of limitation that we are putting, not really looking at it from a business architecture perspective and restricting ourselves to application architecture? Means are
Mm.
we focusing more on delivery value streams than the operational value streams?
Right. I think um, I completely agree with you on this point of view. Right. He doesn't talk about the business architecture. Right. He is focusing on to application architecture. He is focusing on to infrastructure architecture. He's talking about the microservices based and the deployment architecture and whatnot, right? But he hasn't focused on to business architecture. Uh, um, and probably that is the area we would like to have that also covered, because he covered the entire value um, value systems value stream architecture method, but he has forgotten, or maybe that deliberately he has left to not cover the business architecture into that and how exactly that is going to evolve. And when you talk about the business architecture, we are talking about that the processes which is going to evolve, the new mechanisms which are going to come in and whatnot. So yes, he is. Um, Only thing he has covered is that, hey boss, when you're looking at the cost, or when you are having the vendor dependencies, or when you have brought the say ERP systems or the customer CRM systems, or whatever the system you are trying to bring in, look at their architecture. So he doesn't really do not go into the business architecture for sure. He doesn't go there. He just limits himself to infrastructure architecture, application architecture, and the delivery architecture.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably that's an opportunity, that we have grabbed in our book as well. That yes, we are venturing into more business architecture and how that can help drive, DevOps transformation, and how transformation can be positioned more as a business initiative than being looked at as more technology driven initiative.
Yeah. And that's where the true digital agility comes into, right? So you are using this lean methodology at the end of it, and if you leave the business architecture aside, how are you going to create the true digital agility? How are you going to create the fundamentally customer experience, which is ever increasing as the technologies are growing and becoming more relevant? So yes, he has not covered, and we had an opportunity, or maybe he must be listening to us, and maybe he will bring it in the next version, that how do you also think about the overall enterprise architecture, enterprise architecture, and bring the business architecture into the foray of DevOps transformation.
And just to sum it up, right? So I for someone always believed DevOps to be an extension of Agile rather than being something
Mm,
entirely different in its own context. Right?
right.
It's an extension of Agile, leading us to
Mm,
the enterprise agility by bringing in even operations into the purview of transformation that we are looking at.
mm, mm,
Right.
mm,
So from that point of view,
mm.
do we see them as two different initiatives? Because most of the organizations that we see, again, we are focusing this in our book as well, but do you really see them as to be driven as two distinctly siloed initiatives in organizations to be driven? Because when I see digital transformation as an initiative, as an umbrella of initiatives, we always see that you have, agile transformation, you have DevOps transformation, you have cloud transformation. So are they distinctly individualistic is a question I always, for me, I believe they're not, but I want to get your views as well.
Yeah, so I think we both have the same view. They are not distinct, and if you're trying to create a true business agilities, uh, as you said, a true legacy, and when you wanted to create the true agility into the systems, and then these all cannot be looked at in siloed. They all have to look at into the one umbrella under the one integral part of making any organizations true agile organizations, right? If you start looking at, then again you are dealing the different transformation, different initiatives in a silos. So again, you will be creating the complexities over the complexities when you go, and it will be bound to fail. In my mind, it's bound to fail because they will have a very different kind of mindset. There's a different kind of mental model. All that will be operating, and I think very high level. He did not go into the much of the details, but he talks about when to start talking to the cloud transformation journey, or when you get into that particular space. In my mind, it is not true that you should do at the later stage of it. In some part of that book, he talks about how do you look at the overall initiatives together and draw the, which when he talks about the he talks about the roadmap. How do you develop the overall roadmap when you consider all this different kind of transformation which is taking place in the organization? So that you view, he did not take it. Maybe um, he is too engrossed into DevOps and the agile world, that, or maybe he's not seeing it, or maybe that he would have left for the other additional discussions to have from us.
Yeah, and for the benefit of his wisdom, I would say that his concentration has been more on legacy and how you probably maximize the transformation approach in terms of taking care of the legacy. So not taking anything away from him. I think his focus has been, and as the title itself says, right? So it's about how you manage legacy, right? how you
Yeah,
how you transform your legacy, and
right.
move away from your legacy infrastructure, basically, which he's focusing on. So I think, yeah, but we are discussing it in more larger context of organizational or enterprise and business activity, but the focus of the book is more on that legacy part.
Yeah, and as we talked about, truly, like, let's look at that. He is working with Accenture from the last 10 years, right? And the large transformation work, where he would be working, he would have been working with the financial services, insurance companies, telecoms, and all of them, right? All of them carry big legacies. So therefore, his mental model has been working with those organizations, and how do I bring the transformation, agility, speed to those kind of organizations? That's where he is going to. And he talks about very clearly that there is a two world existing at the moment in the IT. One, which is the digital native, like Google kind of organizations and the Amazon kind of organizations. But there are banks which are existing, and they also have IT's businesses. So yeah, I understand where is it coming from.
And I can sense the accent here. affiliation coming through there. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I could understand his pain because I had been in the similar kind of situations, working in the financial services and the telecom. Yeah, yeah. So truly,
so. I think we do have Mahesh and Purna and others in the call. Any questions from Mahesh, you or any others or Purna on the topics that
maybe you can bring them to the panel, and then me four of us can have some questions if they have any to answer.
let me see. I'm trying Mahesh first to be on stage and then we go to Purna. Hi Mahesh. Mahesh, can you hear us? Wow, nice to see you, Mahesh.
I can't see both of them, but yeah. Hi Purna, hi Mahesh. Nice seeing you guys.
Hi Nivarti. Hi Akhilesh. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Purna, I'm able to hear you. Long time. How are you?
Good, sir. What about you?
Just
Yeah,
switch on your video, no, Purna.
I already switched on my video,
it
Akhilesh.
takes a bit of time before the
Okay.
video comes through.
Okay.
Mahesh, can you hear us? Okay, I think he is able to hear us, but he is not able to speak. Maybe bandwidth issue, I guess. I don't know because his bandwidth shows orange. Hey, Puna, how are you? Any questions you have or any thoughts on the discussion we had so far?
Yeah, I have one question. Because you are at
Go ahead, Puna. That's for Mahesh.
okay. Okay. So you are at Enterprise Agile Coach, and similar hat even Akhilesh is also having. Okay, at Agile Coach level, for example, I'm your buddy. Okay, I want to propose a solution to my delivery manager or a senior delivery manager. How to kickstart? You have to have DevOps transformation in the organization. Then only things will go smooth, and speed will increase, agility will increase. How we can kickstart that discussion?
Mm.
Interesting question. Akhil, you want to take a hit?
Right. So, Puna, since you have been the coach, so let me ask you the coach kind of a questions, right? So, what is your idea? How should you start the discussions? What do you think? What is that you have tried so far?
Okay, so for example, on an average, under one delivery manager, 12 to 15 scrum teams are there. Okay, normally I will suggest we will go with pilot. We will pick one or two scrum teams, and we will adapt DevOps transformation and enable CI/CD pipelines, everything. And based on this pilot success, we will adapt the same process or activities of our rest of the teams. Like that, I can suggest Akhilesh.
Huh. But why would I buy when you suggest me this? I'm saying I'm extending this to a different level. Imagine that I'm your business owner, right? And you say I want to bring the CI/CDs, and I will say, okay. So what is the cost? Even to do the small things, how much money you require?
Correct. So without doing any experimenting, we without seeing any outcome, delivery managers, they will say, if I spend this much amount, if I'm not getting any result oriented outcome.
So now you have got, Purna, your own answer, right? So, hey boss, why am I doing what am I doing? So what is going to happen when I bring the agile transformation, when I do the small things, right? What are that? And if you look at in some time back, we were talking about that, hey, what changes it is going to bring it onto the table, right? What would be the change this is going to bring in from the business effectiveness perspective, right? From the delivery perspective, from the operational perspective, from the simplifying the architecture, what exactly the value it is going to bring it, right? To the organization and to the customers and to the employees, right? So when you are doing something and when you're proposing this kind of transformation, what is the context? They are not going to buy anything until unless you contextualize it and create the sense of urgency for them, right? So here is the number of hours, number of days, number of money, number of dollars we are wasting and we are not getting anything. And here is the customer who is kind of in a grief, or here are the people who are working, they're getting tired or they're getting, and then that we do not have the longevity of the teams. The people are leaving organizations and going somewhere else. So there are multiple factors that can be looked into. It had to be contextual. So why am I doing what am I doing? Always I talked about, the teenage syndrome. And what is meaning of teenage syndrome? A teenager having a gadget, and then the other teenager says, I want that gadget, but he don't know why he wants it, right? So we are not doing DevOps and Agile to fulfill what others are doing, and just to so that I am also doing. There is a context. There is a business context in which we wanted to make sure that it fits into that. Nimarti, if you have any other answer to this.
Yeah, one of the things that we always see is most of the times when we try to create our business cases for transformation, it's about the advantage of doing something, right? The focus is more on what opportunities we can grab by undergoing this transformation. But sense of urgency is more highlighted when you actually focus on impact of not transforming, right? So from that point of view, what are we losing by actually not going to DevOps? What are we losing by not adopting the DevOps culture that is required? So from that point of view, when you sometimes focus on losing something, I think there is a greater sense of urgency than probably gaining something which I'm okay with not gaining, right? So I'm more content where I am, but I'll be more compelled to move if you tell me that I'm going to be kicked off from here rather than I would be in position 1, right? So I don't want to be a market topper. I'm happy where I am as an organization. But if you tell me that from number 3 where you are, you will be going down to number 5 by not doing it, I think then there is a bigger sense of urgency that comes in. So I think it's important to highlight what is the impact of not taking up a transformation initiative as much as what is the advantage or what is the opportunity that you are trying to grab by doing it.
Thank you, Akhil. Thank you, Nivarti. Thank you.
Mahesh, are you able to hear us? I don't think we are still able to hear you. But anyway, any questions that you have? I'm seeing something. I'm getting an idea that this book is talking about DevOps for all enterprises and more focused on enterprises having legacy. Is the name DevOps for Modern Enterprise suiting? I think the subtitle clearly calls out Mahesh. Akhil, you can always add here. So I think the author has specifically put the subtitle very clearly to say that his focus is on legacy when he is talking about this book. So
And when, yeah, so he has also Mahesh, in the book he has defined what is meaning of legacy, And then he goes further and saying that, hey boss, true legacy, right? So it is. So he says that whatever Mahesh, and I, for example, you develop an application using, say, simple vanilla JavaScript, PHP application, and then today you are developing application using Vue.js and some different kind of JavaScript technologies, and then you're bringing Ruby on the rail and whatnot, right? So when you're developing this application, and then there is application which is very simple PHP JavaScript based, which is just vanilla, that system looks legacy, isn't it? That system is legacy. I'm just, because I know you have been doing this kind of work, and so that system is legacy. Now, when you're walking into this particular stuff, how are you going to make sure that your legacy system is also brought into this part, right? How do you do the transformation to that? Or shall you let go all of that application and develop from the scratch and develop the microservices and whatnot? And then he goes further, extends that actually what is meaning of the true legacy, and how do you deal with the true legacies to deliver faster for the customers? Or do you really require to touch that legacy systems when you are going to this modernization, when you are going to the modern way of developing the software, right? So that goes and talks about that. Do you require, you don't require? If you require, then how you require to do that?
Yeah, I agree. A good question, but I think he has done Micro Herring has done a great job in focusing on the legacy part, and his definition of legacy is all about yesterday. It's not about the legacy we talk about, wherein we have the, I don't want to take mainframes, but yeah, there are many legacy systems, when you talk about those, but his focus is like, if you are not moving forward consistently, what you have done yesterday is your legacy. So how do you focus always on moving forward, focusing on what is coming through as a challenge than what you have done in the past? I think that's what his definition of legacy is, and credit to him that he has come out with something such kind of definition, because we have an established definition of what legacy means, right? For someone in today's system, probably a Nokia phone with those keys is legacy. But his definition of legacy is, if you have 1 plus 9 today, 1 plus 8 is legacy, right? Tomorrow you 1 plus 10 comes in, 1 plus 9 is legacy.
Yeah.
So that's his definition of legacy. Or Apple, iPhone 13 has come up, iPhone 12 becomes legacy. So how do you keep up consistently with your systems that are consistently dynamically upgrading is what his intention of focusing on legacy is. So all credit to him for redefining the term legacy in the context of DevOps.
And managing it well. To be honest, it's not about DevOps, it's about Agile. This book is about Agile transformation rather than just DevOps.
That's a question mark for me, because I think that's a different context and different discussion. We would have some other time, but not for today, as we are getting to the hour. And it's been wonderful for everyone, those who are joining and those who have been with us. And if you are seeing this video on recording after the session, do feel free to subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/Nivarti Jairam, and we'll have more videos coming through every fortnight. Thanks, Akhil, for sharing your wisdom, and thanks Mahesh, Poorna, and others for joining and asking questions. We'll see you in a fortnight. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.